It's my pleasure to announce the next speaker, Tariq Assoula from Paris. And Tariq will be talking about HBV combination therapy, interferon and NUCs. Tariq, please.
Thank you, Marcus. Mike, I would like to thank Ira Stefan for this kind invitation. So during the next 20 minutes, I will discuss on combination therapy, interferon and NUCs. I will follow this agenda. Why do we need combination therapy? Which endpoints? HBS quantification as a new tool for trials and in clinics. And then combination therapy of interferon plus NUCs and take-home message. We had a very nice session yesterday about entry inhibitors, drugs in development. So I will concentrate on combination treatments with interferon and NUCs. So we know that now we achieve very high chance, and patients, the majority are injectable with tenofovir, entecavir, transaminase are normal. We have fibrosis regressions with this long-term study with paired liver biopsy 5 years and also reversal of cirrhosis. So finally, we have high potent analogs, no resistance issue, fibrosis regression. So why do we need new strategy with a combination of interferon and analogs? I think because HBS loss, which is a strong marker associated in prognosis, is rarely achieved. We don't know really well the long term, after 10 years, 20 years of analogs, the risk of toxicity. We have adherence issue, and now many patients stop treatments and have some relapse, and when they have cirrhosis, there's some risk. And there issue with cost, because sometimes we consider only the cost of 3 months, 1 year, but we have to consider the cost of 20, 30 years of treatments in young patients starting a therapy. So you know that the EASL guidelines and many guidelines recommend 2 strategies, the interferon strategy and the NUC strategy with advantages and disadvantages. Pegylated interferon sometimes is not considered because of the risk of adverse events. But the major advantage, it's a finite durations, absence of resistance, and a higher rate in comparison with other therapies for seroconversion or HBS loss. So when you have 2 main actors, or when you have a team, you try to get the best advantage for each one and to combine them. So the idea will be to take only the advantage. So to combine, to have a finite durations, to combine and to avoid some side effects by shortening maybe the interferon duration, to have potent antiviral with the analogs. So we know that this idea and strategy has been discussed several times, but we don't know how to combine the best. So which endpoint should be used in future strategy trials? So I will discuss a little on HBS quantification. We know that HBS loss is associated with improved survival. It's an old study from Italy that said that the patients with HBS loss has an improved survival in comparison of others. And this has been confirmed in many, many studies. We know that HBS loss is the ultimate goal of therapy. It's closest to cure. There's no HBV eradication. It remains cccDNA in the liver. However, it's a functional cure, and the patients after S loss are going well in some studies that follow these patients. HBS quantifications might be a surrogate marker of cccDNA. You see in E-positive patients the correlation between cccDNA and HBS quantifications in these studies. And since we cannot repeat during follow-up liver biopsy or maybe needle aspirations, we could use HBS quantification. There are several techniques. I present you 2 techniques. These techniques are now automatics. They are very well robust. If you follow a patient, it's recommended to use the same techniques, but you can use either one or another. So either the architect or the Elexis provide strong data. There's a good correlation in HBS quantification according to the 2 techniques used. You can see the very strong correlation in the techniques. So there's no limiting factors for the use of these techniques in routine. Why this HBS? because you can see patients who are followed on PEG interferon therapy, and you can follow with viral load or HBS kinetics, you can see that viral load will not separate the patient's relapser or SVR. So we do not predict the chance to cure with HBS DNA kinetics. It's also true for analogs, because all patients will have a decrease in DNA. However, HBS HG kinetics might predict the patient with chance to cure. So I think you can combine several tools, make some formula, to identify the patients who have higher chance to be cured. So it encourages to test for interferon. And at the contrary, you can have stopping rule, which patients should not be candidates for interferon and to avoid this type of treatment. So you see also the examples with analogs, and DNA, they will all have a reduction, so HBS quantification might help, but what will be the positive predictive value and the negative predictive value in clinics? So when you can see baseline, the best predictors are before initiating a treatment, because you can discuss with the patients, and you can see responders and non-responders in red. And you can see that those with lower baseline HBS quantification have higher chance to achieve a response to therapy. You can also make HBS quantification during therapy. This is the ESCALATE study. And you can see that those who at week 12 has a level lower than 1,500 international per milliliter have higher chance to respond in E positive, but also E negative. So then there's one step before treatment. You make the HBS quantification. And then after 12 weeks, you say, OK, there's a decrease. And the decrease can be either in comparison with the prior measures as a delta decrease of half a log or 1 log, or it could be a cutoff with this cutoff of 1,500. So then sometimes you said, I make the measure at 12 weeks. I wait for 1 week the results, and you can prolong few weeks interferon before making a decision. Also interestingly, and Harry reported these studies, you see HBS quantifications after a patient has been controlled with NUCs to say if we can stop therapy. And you can see in green that the patients who were lower than 100 international unit had less than 10% of risk of relapse. But the interpretation could be different. You can say these patients, we can stop and they will avoid relapse. But you can see also these patients with the lower level of HBS quantification are the ones who maybe will achieve HBS loss and encourage to continue treatment. So I think strategy will be different in countries with low prevalence and high income to have a maximum of patients who achieve HBS loss. But maybe in China, we will try also to stop therapy in a maximum of patients. So I think the interpretations could be the both. So finally, for these HBS quantification tools, HBS titer in combination with HBV DNA enables on-treatment adjustments. And there's a very strong stopping rule that has been implemented in guidelines. Absence of decline combined with DNA and HBS at week 12 is highly predictive of non-response. It was known in the old studies with PEG interferon. With NUCs, decline is lower than with PEG interferon, more pronounced in E positive, and low baseline titer and decline during the 24 weeks of therapy predictive of E and S loss. So now, after this introduction, we have to know better how to combine the treatments. We have to implement the tools for all the future trials. How to combine. And previous studies have been presented by Harry with Thomas Berg randomized trial, with Harry Group's publication. I will concentrate on one of the largest studies now of combination. So just to remember, when you take two actors, is interferon and entecavir or tenofovir, to look at them separately. And you can see that HBS loss is achieved with interferon and not with analogs. And so it might not be only correlated to the potency of the analogs, but it could be also the immune system. We thought in the beginning that doing combinations with entecavir, tenofovir that were higher potency than lamivudine, it will increase the HBS seroconversion. But this was not shown in the studies. So this is one of the largest studies. You are aware of this study. It's 4 arms. It's a randomized, controlled open-label study, 740 patients. And you see that patients in the arm A, in dark blue, were having 48 weeks of PEG plus Teno. In the second arm, PEG-related interferon was only for 16 weeks to try to see if we can have a short treatment duration of PEG to enhance response and decrease the duration of side effects of interferon. The third arm is tenofovir alone, and the fourth arm is PEG alone, so as comparator, the two recommended strategies. And then, of course, there was also a rescue therapy if there was a relapse, so of course everything was well established. And there's the response at 72 weeks as a first primary endpoint was HBsAg loss at week 72. You see the baseline characteristics. I will not go through details, but just to give you some information, you see that the majority, 75% of patients, were Asian. And so the distribution of genotype was more for genotype B and C than for A and D. So maybe we need more also data for genotype A and D. So you can see the mean viral load, the mean HBsAg quantifications, and the transaminases. Then if you look first to the main endpoint, HBsAg loss, you see that the first arm, 48 weeks of PEG plus Teno in dark blue, provide a higher chance of HBsAg loss. I think that even if you have 9% sometime, it means that this 9%, you stop treatment for all life. So even if you treat 10 patients and for one, you achieve this result, I think it's meaningful clinically. Of course, we will need to have long-term data to see if this data increase with time. It was known with interferon, when you stop treatments, you still have HBs loss and seroconversion. We have to look also for seroreversions. You can see also that the arms with PEG and Teno for 16 weeks provide less good results. If you look change now in HBs quantification, and you look tenofovir, PEG-Teno, PEG alone or tenofovir, you can see that the decrease is higher with this combination of PEG-related plus tenofovir for 48 weeks, and is statistically different between each groups. But also, what is interesting to see is that you take the arm with 16 weeks, you see that when you stop interferon, there's no more significance. So it means that interferon is the driving factors for this decrease in combination with treatments. So it's a very interesting data, and I think that long-term follow-up will be very important. What about predictors, baseline predictors and on-treatment predictors? You see that the chance to have HBs loss was higher in patients with genotype A versus other genotypes. And for on-treatment predictors, the decrease of higher than 1 log after 12 weeks was a predictor of response. And also what was very important is that this study confirmed the stopping rule. If you have no decrease in HBs quantification, no decrease in these factors, then the chance to have an S loss is null, and you have to stop this strategy. You see, finally, the predictors on treatment at week 12, HBs decline, sensitivity, specificity, so it's a good negative predictive value for this decline. So finally, dear colleagues, I think that for future trials, we have to be ambitious. We don't need just to reduce DNA, but to obtain this HBs loss and seroconversion. I think with many actors coming in research, with many studies, there will be this possibility. How to use better the treatment that we have now before having the new treatment options, because many new targets are in early development and will not have future treatments soon. So to analyze better the ongoing studies, PEG-Teno for 48 weeks induce more HBs decline and higher HBs loss. E-status, baseline HBsAg, DNA can impact virological response. Maybe we will have some formula, some tools to predict better which patients are candidates, and also to know which patients should not go on interferon as a stopping rule. Future research to use better combination therapy is needed. Thank you for your attention.